Every day she came home crying from school. When they discovered the reason, they were shocked. Mrs. Barbara felt her heart tighten every time she saw her 4-year-old granddaughter coming home with red, puffy eyes and her pink backpack trembling on her tiny shoulders. The 68-year-old widow couldn't understand how a child who was so cheerful in the morning returned in tears every single day. It was on the 5th consecutive afternoon of crying that Barbara decided something was very wrong. Little Emma threw herself into her arms as she always did, sobbing uncontrollably without being able to explain what was happening. When questioned, the daycare teacher just shook her head and insisted nothing unusual happened during class. "Emma, sweetheart, tell me what's going on," Barbara whispered, stroking the little girl's blonde hair. But the answer was always the same: more tears and a deafening silence. The child clung to her grandmother as if her life depended on it, trembling from head to toe. Barbara had lived alone with Emma ever since her daughter Jennifer left to work in New York City, leaving the girl in her care in rural Pennsylvania. The child's father had never taken responsibility, and Barbara had become both mother and grandmother at once. Their routine had always been peaceful. Emma had been attending Happy Corner Municipal Daycare for 6 months and had always loved going there. She played with her little friends, sang the songs she learned, and came home chattering about everything she'd done during the day. But something had changed drastically the previous week, and Barbara couldn't figure out what. The next morning, she decided to investigate further. She arrived at the daycare a little early and watched Emma walk through the front door. The little girl waved cheerfully at her before running off to join her classmates. She seemed perfectly normal and happy. "Mrs. Barbara, you don't need to worry. Emma is one of the most engaged children in the class," said the teacher, Jessica, a young and seemingly dedicated woman. "Then why does she come home crying every day?" Barbara asked, unable to hide the concern in her voice. "Honestly, I can't explain it. She's fine here the whole time. Maybe it's just a phase, you know how kids are." Barbara wasn't convinced. She had raised 3 children and knew when something was genuinely wrong. Her grandmotherly and maternal instincts screamed that Emma was suffering in some way. She decided to talk to other mothers at the daycare gate. That's when she discovered she wasn't alone in her worry. "My Olivia has been coming home different too," said Ashley, mother of a girl Emma's age. "She used to be so talkative, but now she barely speaks at home." "My Timmy too," added Grace Williams. "He used to tell me everything about daycare, but now when I ask, he turns his face away and stays quiet." 3 children with similar behavior changes. Barbara felt a chill in her stomach. This couldn't be a coincidence. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The 3 mothers decided to meet at Barbara's house that afternoon to try and figure out what was happening. While the children played in the living room, they talked in the kitchen. "Did you notice the changes all started the same week?" Ashley observed, stirring her coffee nervously. "Exactly," Grace confirmed. "It was last week that it all began." Barbara thought about it. Had there been any changes at the daycare that specific week? She tried to recall anything different, but nothing came to mind. "Let's talk to the director tomorrow," Barbara suggested. "Together, maybe we can get some answers." The next morning, the 3 mothers headed to the office of Principal Susan, a middle-aged woman known in town for her strict administrative style. "Look, I understand your concern, but I can assure you nothing happened at the daycare," said Susan, crossing her arms over the desk. "All the teachers are qualified and I personally monitor the activities. But Principal, 3 children from the same class with the same behavior can't be a coincidence," insisted Barbara. "Sometimes children go through phases. It could be some outside influence from TV, who knows?" The principal's defensive response only deepened the mother's suspicions. Barbara realized they wouldn't get answers that way. During the week, she decided to observe more closely. She started arriving earlier at the daycare and staying longer at pickup, watching everything she could. That's when she noticed something strange. Emma and the other children arrived happy in the morning, but there was a specific time of day when that changed. Around 3 in the afternoon, when the school transport arrived to pick up some kids, she saw a shift in Emma's behavior. The little girl, who had been playing cheerfully, suddenly became tense and withdrawn. It was as if something scared her at that exact moment. Barbara decided to investigate the school transport. The daycare offered the service for children who lived farther away, but Emma didn't use it because they lived nearby. So why did the van's arrival make her nervous? The next day, she discreetly watched the vehicle arrive. It was an ordinary white van, driven by Mr. Bernard, a man well known in town, and a monitor she didn't recognize. "Who's the new monitor?" she asked Teacher Jessica casually. "Oh, that's Christine. She started last week. The previous monitor left without notice." Barbara's heart raced. Last week, exactly when the problems began. She observed the monitor more closely. Christine was a young woman around 25, but there was something about her demeanor that unsettled Barbara. Maybe it was the abrupt way she spoke to the children or the impatient way she hurried them into the van. She decided to talk to Mr. Bernard, whom she'd known for years. "Mr. Bernard, how's it been working with the new monitor?" The man glanced around before answering, as if checking no one was listening. "Mrs. Barbara, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but the young lady is a bit high-strung, you know. Sometimes she yells at the little ones." "Yells?" Barbara felt her blood boil. "Well, I tried talking to her, but she said I'm just the driver and don't understand education. I even spoke to the principal, but it seems they're friends." Friends? Another piece of the puzzle. That would explain why Principal Susan had been so defensive. Barbara went home with her mind racing. She needed concrete proof, but how could she get it when Emma and the other children were too young to explain exactly what was happening? That night, she tried a different approach with Emma. Instead of asking directly about the daycare, she started playing dolls with her. "Emma, let's pretend the doll is going to school." The little girl, who had been relaxed, suddenly tensed up. "I don't want to play that, Grandma." "Why, sweetheart? The mean lady yells at the dolls." Barbara's heart stopped. Mean lady. Emma was talking about someone at the daycare. "What mean lady, Emma?" But the little girl had already closed off again, picking up another doll to play something else. Barbara knew she was on the right track. She needed to find out more about this mean lady and how she was affecting her granddaughter and the other children. The next day, she spoke again with Ashley and Grace Williams, sharing her discoveries. "Can you try asking your daughters about a mean lady?" Barbara suggested. The three mothers did the test at home. The results were disturbing. All the children reacted the same way. They became tense and refused to talk about it. "This isn't normal," said Grace Williams, clearly worried. "My Timmy has never been afraid to talk to me about anything." Barbara decided they needed a more direct strategy. The following Monday, she volunteered to help at the daycare in the afternoon, right when the van arrived. "Mrs. Barbara, it's so nice to have you here," said the teacher, Jessica. "The children love it when family members join in the activities." Barbara watched carefully all afternoon. The children played normally, participated in the activities, and seemed happy. Until the moment she was waiting for arrived. 3:30 p.m. van time. The sound of the engine approaching made Emma and other children visibly tense. Barbara noticed it wasn't just the three the mothers had identified. Several others also showed discomfort. The monitor, Christine, entered the room with firm steps and a loud voice. "Come on, transport kids! Hurry, hurry! I don't have all day!" The tone was clearly aggressive for such young children. Barbara saw Emma hide behind a table, even though she wasn't one of the kids who used the transport. "Timmy, Olivia, Luke, let's go!" Christine shouted impatiently. "Anyone who doesn't come now will be left here alone." The children ran toward the monitor, terrified. Barbara noticed some were nearly crying from fear. "Johnny, stop crying or something worse will happen to you." Christine threatened a 3-year-old boy who had stumbled. Barbara felt her blood boil. This was clear psychological abuse against defenseless children. She immediately understood why Emma and the other kids were traumatized. Even if they didn't use the transport, they witnessed this aggressive treatment daily and feared it might happen to them too. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Barbara decided to discreetly follow the van to see how Christine treated the children during the ride. She took her car and kept a safe distance, watching the vehicle. To her surprise, the van didn't follow the usual route to the children's homes. Instead, it took a strange detour and stopped in front of a modest house on the outskirts of town. Barbara parked far away and observed. Christine got out of the van and shouted to someone inside the house. A few minutes later, a teenager who looked about 15 came out and entered the vehicle. Barbara's heart raced. Why was a strange teenager getting into the van with little kids? She followed the van again and noticed the children's behavior had completely changed. Through the windows she could see they were clearly terrified. The teenagers seemed to be doing something that scared them badly. The van stopped at the first house to drop off a child. Barbara took the chance to get closer and overheard part of the conversation. "If any of you tell anyone about Tyler, very bad things will happen," Christine said to the children. "Tyler knows kids who disappeared because they were disobedient." Barbara's legs trembled. This woman was terrorizing 3- and 4-year-olds with threats. The teenager, apparently named Tyler, laughed at the situation. "It's true," the teen said in a voice trying to sound scary. "I've seen kids get taken because they disobeyed. You all have to stay quiet always." The children inside the van were visibly petrified. Some cried softly, others shrank into their seats. Barbara had seen enough. She rushed home and immediately called Ashley and Grace Williams. "You won't believe what I found out," she said, still trembling with anger and horror. She told them everything she had witnessed. The 3 mothers were shocked and furious. "We have to do something right away," said Ashley. "This is psychological torture." "But how can we prove it?" questioned Grace Williams. "It's our word against theirs, and the principal has already shown she'll protect the monitor." Barbara thought for a moment. They needed concrete evidence. "I'll record a conversation with Emma tonight. If we can get her to talk about what's happening, we'll have proof." That evening, Barbara created a cozy atmosphere for Emma. She made the girls' favorite dinner. They watched cartoons together and then they lay in bed to talk. "Emma, Grandma wants to tell you a secret," Barbara began softly. "You know Grandma loves you very much and would never let anyone hurt you, right?" The little girl nodded, hugging her stuffed bear. "If anyone is being mean to you or your little friends, you can tell Grandma. Nothing bad will happen." Emma stayed quiet for a long moment. Then, in a tiny voice, she began to speak. "Grandma, the car lady yells a lot at the kids." "What car lady, sweetheart?" "The lady who takes the kids home. She says the big boy will take the kids who tell secrets." Barbara's heart broke hearing this. Her 4-year-old granddaughter had been carrying this terrible fear for over a week. "And what else happens, Emma?" "The big boy shows ugly things on his phone, and he says he knows the boogeyman. The kids get really scared and cry." Barbara was recording everything on her phone, but her main focus was comforting Emma. "Sweetheart, you don't have to be afraid anymore. Grandma will fix this, okay?" "But if I tell, will the big boy take me away?" "No, my angel. No one will ever take you from Grandma, I promise." Emma seemed to relax a little, but Barbara could see the trauma was deeply rooted. The next day, she shared the recording with the other mothers. They were all shocked to hear the children's accounts. "This is monstrous," said Ashley, tears in her eyes. "How could anyone do this to such little children?" They decided to approach the principal again, but this time with concrete evidence. "Principal Susan, we have recordings of the children reporting threats and intimidation during school transportation," Barbara said firmly. The principal looked visibly nervous. "Look, even if this were true, you can't record children without permission. It has no legal value." "Legal value?" Grace Williams exploded. "We're talking about children's well-being. This has human value." "You're exaggerating. Christine is a good professional. Maybe the children are imagining things." The principal's denial only confirmed the mother's suspicions. There was more to this protection. Barbara decided to investigate the relationship between Susan and Christine. She discreetly spoke to Mrs. Rose, who had worked in daycare cleaning for over 10 years. "Mrs. Rose, do you know the new monitor, Christine?" Mrs. Rose looked around before answering. "Yes, Mrs. Barbara, she's Principal Susan's cousin." Barbara's blood ran cold. Cousin. That explained everything. "And have you noticed anything strange about her?" "Well, Mrs. Barbara, I just clean and stay out of trouble, but I have seen her yell at the kids, and that boy she picks up every day, he shouldn't be in the van with the little ones." "Why not?" "Because he has problems. He used to go to school here in the city and was always difficult. His mother had to pull him out of several schools because of his behavior." Barbara now had a clearer picture of the situation. An incompetent monitor protected by nepotism. traumatizing children with the help of a troubled teenager. She gathered the other mothers again and shared her findings. "We have to do something more drastic," said Ashley. "The principal won't act because she's protecting her cousin." "Let's reach out to other affected families," suggested Grace Williams. "The more people who know, the more pressure we can apply." They began a broader investigation, discreetly speaking with other parents. They discovered at least 8 children were being affected, but many parents hadn't yet noticed the behavioral changes or didn't know how to handle the situation. Barbara organized a meeting at the local church, inviting all affected families. On the scheduled night, 15 concerned parents attended. "What you're about to hear today may shock you," Barbara began, "but it's necessary to protect our children." She laid out the entire situation, the threats, the troubled teenager, the principal's nepotism. The parents were stunned. "My son has been waking up screaming at night," one mother shared. "Now I understand why." "My daughter developed a fear of cars," said another father. "I thought it was just a phase." "We have to act together," Barbara declared. "Alone, we'll be ignored. Together, we have the strength to change this." The group decided on 3 strategies: document more evidence, pressure the city office responsible for the daycare, and, if necessary, involve Child Protective Services. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Over the following week, the parents organized shifts to discreetly observe the daycare. Each day, 2 or 3 parents took turns documenting any irregularities. It was during one of these shifts that Ashley witnessed an even more disturbing scene. Christine had deliberately left a few children last in the van, taking an unnecessary detour through the city before dropping them off. "You'll stay in here until you learn to behave," she told the children, who were clearly exhausted and terrified. Ashley discreetly filmed everything and rushed to show Barbara. "This is torture," Barbara said, watching the video. "She's punishing 3-year-olds by leaving them trapped in a van under the sun." They had enough evidence. It was time to act. The next day, the group of parents marched to the city office, demanding a meeting with the education secretary. With videos, recordings, and testimonies, they presented a complete dossier of the situation. The secretary, Dr. Richard, was visibly disturbed by the evidence. "This is unacceptable," he said, reviewing the documents. "I'll order an immediate investigation." "Dr. Richard, we don't just want an investigation," Barbara said firmly. "We want action. These children can't spend another day under this threat. The monitor will be suspended today, and I'll personally visit the daycare to speak with the principal." It was the group's first victory, but Barbara knew the fight was far from over. When they arrived at the daycare with the secretary, Principal Susan tried to downplay the situation. "Dr. Richard, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Christine is a dedicated professional." "Principal Susan, I've seen the videos. There's no misunderstanding that justifies threatening 3-year-olds, the secretary replied firmly. Christine was called into the office and, confronted with the evidence, tried to defend herself. "I was just trying to maintain discipline. Children need boundaries. Threatening children with disappearance isn't setting boundaries. It's psychological abuse," Barbara countered. The monitor was suspended immediately, but the story was far from over. That night, Barbara received an anonymous call. "If you keep up this harassment, you'll regret it," said a disguised female voice. Barbara realized they had stumbled upon something bigger than they'd imagined. More people were involved in this protective network. The next day, she spoke with Mr. Bernard, the van driver. "Mr. Bernard, now that Christine has been removed, can you tell me the whole truth?" The man looked around and sighed. "Mrs. Barbara, I wanted to speak up sooner, but I was afraid of losing my job. Christine wasn't just yelling at the kids, she was skimming money from the van's fuel funds." "What do you mean?" "She had her son, Tyler, ride in the van so she wouldn't have to pay for his transportation. And she made up longer routes to justify higher fuel costs, but the extra money went straight into her pocket." Barbara was shocked. It wasn't just psychological abuse, it was embezzlement of public funds. Did the principal know about this? "Mrs. Barbara, I think the principal was getting a cut of the money. They always whispered about budget adjustments." The situation was far worse than they'd imagined. Corruption and abuse went hand in hand. Barbara immediately reported this to the education secretary, who ordered a full audit of the daycare. Meanwhile, the children were still traumatized. Emma kept having nightmares and refused to ride in any vehicle except her grandmother's car. Barbara decided they needed professional help. She reached out to the town's child psychologist, Dr. Ann Peterson. "Dr. Peterson, my granddaughter and other children went through psychological threats. How can I help them recover?" The psychologist explained that trauma in young children required great care and patience. The most important thing is restoring their sense of safety. They need to know they're protected, and that the adults in charge won't let it happen again. Barbara organized group therapy sessions for the affected children. It was touching to see them slowly open up about their fears and realize they weren't to blame for anything. During the recovery process, the daycare audit uncovered even more serious irregularities. The auditor found that Principal Susan had set up an overbilling scheme that went far beyond school transportation. Fake vendors, falsified invoices, embezzlement of school meal funds. It was an elaborate corruption operation. "Dr. Richard, we've found evidence of over $50,000 misused in the last 2 years," the auditor reported. The discovery shook the entire community. The daycare meant to protect and educate children had been turned into a source of illegal income. Susan was removed from her position, and an administrative investigation began. Christine was also charged for both psychological abuse and her role in the corruption scheme. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. During the investigation, it was discovered that Tyler, the teenager who terrorized the children, wasn't Christine's son, as everyone believed. He was her younger brother, and she had made up the story to justify his presence in the van. The real reason was even more disturbing. Tyler had serious behavioral issues and had been expelled from multiple schools for bullying younger children. Christine had used the daycare kids as a kind of training to feed her brother's troubling impulses. "She was using our children as toys to satisfy his cruelty," said Ashley, stunned by the revelation. The investigation also revealed that the ugly videos Tyler showed the children were violent, frightening content he intentionally downloaded to traumatize them. "This is pure sadism," remarked Grace Williams. "They enjoyed watching our kids terrified." The psychological recovery process for the children became even more complex with these revelations. Dr. Ann Peterson explained that the type of trauma they endured could have lasting consequences if not properly addressed. Barbara dedicated herself entirely to Emma's recovery. They established comforting routines, activities to restore the little girl's trust, and lots of affection. Slowly, Emma began to improve. The nightmares lessened. She started smiling again and played like before. But the mark of that experience would remain forever. During this time, Barbara discovered her fight had inspired changes far beyond Happy Corner Municipal Daycare. The Secretary of Education implemented new safety protocols across all early childhood education institutions in the city. "Mrs. Barbara, because of your courage, no child in our city will go through this again," said Dr. Richard during a meeting. Cameras were installed in school buses, monitors underwent mandatory childcare training, and a direct hotline was created for reports from parents and children. A permanent parent committee was also established to oversee daycare and school activities, ensuring such situations would never repeat. Barbara was invited to chair this committee, a recognition of her dedication and courage in protecting not just Emma, but all the children in the community. 6 months after the first signs that something was wrong, life had returned to normal, but a much better and safer normal. Emma had fully recovered and was even more confident than before. The experience, though painful, had taught her she could trust her grandmother and that there would always be someone to protect her. "Grandma, you're my hero," Emma said one afternoon, hugging Barbara. "No, sweetheart. The hero is you for being brave enough to tell me what was happening." The community had also transformed. Parents were more involved and attentive to their children's well-being. They formed support groups, more efficient communication channels, and a safety net to ensure no child would go unnoticed. Christine was convicted of psychological abuse and embezzlement of public funds. Tyler was referred to specialized psychological treatment. Susan lost her position and was also prosecuted for administrative misconduct. But the greatest victory wasn't the punishments. The greatest victory was knowing dozens of children were now safe and protected. On the last day of the school year, the daycare's new director, Teacher Meredith, organized a special celebration for the families. "This year was one of great transformation," she said in her speech. "We've learned that education is only true when it happens in an environment of love, respect, and safety." Barbara sat in the audience, watching Emma play happily with her classmates. The little girl had become a natural leader among the children, always ready to help the shyer ones. "Grandma, can I tell you a secret?" Emma whispered in Barbara's ear. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm not afraid of anything anymore, because I know you'll always take care of me." Tears of happiness streamed down Barbara's face. That fight had been worth it. Every moment of anguish, every confrontation, every sleepless night, it had all been necessary to reach this point. When they got home that afternoon, Emma ran to the backyard to play. Barbara watched her through the kitchen window, her heart overflowing with love and pride. Her granddaughter was safe, happy, and confident. And most importantly, the whole community had learned that protecting children was everyone's responsibility. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Hello, Mrs. Barbara. It's Jennifer from New York City." It was her daughter, Emma's mother. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" "Mom, I just wanted to thank you. I heard about everything that happened and how you fought to protect Emma. I don't know how to repay you." "Jennifer, I just did what any grandmother would do. Emma is the light of my life." "Mom, I've decided to come back home. I found a job here in the city and I want to be close to both of you." Barbara felt her heart fill with joy. Having the family together again would be the icing on the cake after such a challenging year. "What wonderful news, dear. Emma will be over the moon. And Mom, I want you to know that Emma was so lucky to have a grandmother like you. You saved my daughter. We saved her, dear. All the mothers and fathers who came together saved her and all the other children." After hanging up the phone, Barbara went out to the backyard where Emma was playing. "Emma, I have a surprise for you." "What surprise, Grandma?" "Your mommy is coming back home." Emma let out a joyful scream and jumped into Barbara's arms. "Now we'll be 3 strong women together," the little girl said, making Barbara laugh. "That's right, my love, 3 very strong women." That night, as Emma slept peacefully in her bed, Barbara reflected on everything that had happened. It had started with a worried grandmother trying to understand why her granddaughter cried every day. It had turned into a community fight that changed the entire child protection system in the city. Sometimes, Barbara thought, the greatest heroes are ordinary people who simply refuse to let something wrong keep happening. Emma never came home crying from school again, and Barbara knew she had fulfilled her most important mission in life, protecting her granddaughter and making sure she grew up in a world that was a little safer and fairer. The end. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe Barbara made the right decisions? Leave your honest opinion in the comments about this grandmother's fight to protect her granddaughter. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.